sweet.
Oh, excuse me. That made me
That was
sneeze.
sweet.
Emotions make me sneeze. See that?
Joel Embiid won the MVP. We're joined by Imman Adan from Yahoo Sports Canada and Siobhan
Hello.
Beslow of the Miami Heat beat. Welcome. Um,
Hey, Nat.
I'm so excited to have this discussion with you ladies about just with three people who love basketball as much as me. There was a lot of debate around this MVP race. Some may say that it got toxic. Imman, you and I have spoken about it before. Ashley, I've definitely seen some of your tweets and takes on the timeline. I was incredibly vocal about it too. So I'm going to start with Siobhan because I don't know where you stand, but I'm really happy to see Joel win. I actually thought he should have won last year. And I think my only takeaway from this, I'm glad to see how happy he is. It was a very divisive race, maybe a little bit more than normal. But I just don't like some of the commentary like, oh, now who's next? Or like some way suggesting that he wasn't a worthy MVP key candidate. I think there were three MVP candidates, Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid. I think they all had individual great cases. And if any of them won, I think they were deserving. So that's the only thing I want to push back against. But otherwise, I'm curious to know what you think, Siobhan. Was Embiid your MVP?
Um, I'll say for me personally, he was because I had begun to really see the way that I've been wanting him to play. Like he's been dominant this season. And I think you saw towards the end of last season, what makes me most happy for someone like him is to see him better taking care of his body, to see him like approaching the game, like from what feels like a more serious standpoint, like, really, really focusing and locking in on just what he needs to do both inside the lines and out and just taking care of himself. So I give him the MVP. I agree with you, Nat, that some of the comments around it have been weird. Like, if Jokic is your vote, give him your vote. Don't not give it because, oh, I don't want him to have three in a row or whatever. Just like, not incendiary. I think that's a bit strong, but, I guess to your overall sentiment of I guess trying to minimize either three of their seasons, what their impact are to their team. There's a way to bolster the people that you like without denigrating or just being unjustly or unnecessarily rude or just kind of condescending to other people in the race. So I'm happy for him, and I hope he continues to play dominant. And if we see them later, we see them later. But I'm not upset with that, and I can understand, I guess, too, thinking he should have won it last year.
Yeah, for the record, I'm one of the no three in a row people. So I just want to
Why?
be on the record about that. But Ashley, I'm curious, what do you think? Like,
Yeah.
do you think Embiid deserved it, or did you have another pick?
For me, it was Jokic through most of the year. I think it was highly impressive what he was doing. I mean, averaging a triple double. And also, the Nuggets were the number one seed throughout the entire season. That's extremely hard to do. We know how much the standings and the seeding fluctuates throughout the season. The Nuggets stayed steady, and a lot of that was because of the incredible performances that Jokic was giving night in and night out. Now, I will say the NBA, like most sports, is a what have you done for me lately league. And I will say in the last month of the season, Embiid kind of pulled ahead of him a little bit because of the games that he was having. And also, if you remember, the Nuggets went on that little bit of a losing streak with Jokic on the floor. Now, some people will look at a season as a whole, like I do, and say that doesn't really matter. Look at what he has done throughout the course of a season. But I can also understand people have short-term memories in sports, and Embiid kind of solidified himself as the MVP in that last month. I'm with you, Nat. I think that it really only came down ever to three people, Giannis, Jokic, and Embiid. And I want to say in the last month and a half, for me personally, it was between Embiid and Jokic. One of them win it. I'm okay with either decision. I didn't have an issue with Jokic possibly winning three in a row, but I also didn't have an issue with Embiid winning this award. I think they were both exceptional candidates for it. And I agree. I do think that there was more infamy surrounding this MVP conversation than I feel like we've ever had before. And I don't like the racial baiting that kind of went into this discussion, because like we have said on this panel, and we have said time and time again, they were both deserving candidates, had incredible seasons, and I don't think that conversation was necessary, but I'm also happy to just put that to bed and never have to talk about it again. So congrats, Embiid. I know you wanted it. Some people said you should have got it last season. I'm glad you got it. You got one. The emotions were there. I'm glad to never have this conversation again in life. Thank you. Thank you.
Imman, last word on this before we move on.
I think you guys hit on a lot of like the key points, and I'm with Ashley on the point of that last month really turned the tide for me of this conversation. You had Jokic losing a lot of the Nuggets were floundering. People were really worried about them, and the Sixers have a better record than them now, right? Like if the two match up in the finals, the Sixers will be the team with home court advantage in that situation. Also, when it's so close, when it's this tight of a race, you're splitting hairs and you have to find what differentiates guys. And for Embiid, that game that he had against the Celtics where he put up that 52-point game like that, while the Nuggets were floundering, I think really turned the tide in his favor because it is a what have you done for me lately league. But also, we saw Embiid and Jokic match up for a game this season. And I think that was one of the biggest ones in terms of turning the tide for the MVP race. And Embiid had 47 points in that one. So, when you're talking about dominant performances, I think Embiid did it when they mattered. I think the fact that Jokic has won 2 before also influenced it. But yeah, to me, it seemed like in the last month, the conversation was had and it was Embiid's to lose.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the MVP is coming back tonight. It was announced earlier that he's going to be back for game 2, which surprised me a little bit because with vintage Harden showing up and giving the Sixers game 1 in the series, I didn't expect him to come back tonight. And also just the news around the severity of his injury seemed like he was going to be out a little bit longer. So, but it was announced he's coming back. So, Imman, I want to start here with you because I know you were going back and forth with Celtics Mafia about this series and how close the teams are. And, Harden showed up and got the win for the Sixers and he put them in a good position. So what are your thoughts so far? Only one game played. We're going to get game 2. What do you think?
I'm a Harden believer, I think, and that's like a rare thing for people to be in the playoffs. But to me, the conversation in the Eastern Conference was always that you had 3 teams at the top, and shout out to Siobhan's Miami Heat for taking out one of them in the Milwaukee Bucks, and then it was the Celtics and the Sixers. So I always saw it as a tiered system in the Eastern Conference, and it didn't make sense to me that we were having these conversations about just the Bucks and the Celtics and everybody else when it felt like the Sixers were very clearly in that class. And I think they proved that with their play. And I think we saw it in game 1. Also, my whole conversation about the Celtics is their defenses looked a little shaky. And in the playoffs right now, they would have the worst defense of any team that's made it to the second round. In their last 5 games, they would have a defensive rating that's worse than the San Antonio Spurs, who were the 30th ranked defense in the NBA. They're struggling right now defensively. We saw that game 1. Their offense was clicking. Their offense was humming, and it has been all playoffs, but they haven't really been able to stop guys. And that allows guys, when you have wings like a Harden, like a Maxey, and you have a big like an Embiid, to me, I think the Celtics have a lot more issues than people are making it seem like, and it's very clear that the Bucks did as well. And so I didn't understand the tiered system in the Eastern Conference that had the Sixers, below them. It very much felt like the Sixers were at the top there. Series is still over. Early. It can go to the Celtics. They can win the next 3-4. It wouldn't surprise me because I think the Sixers also were flawed, but we're starting to see a lot of the cracks with the Celtics. We're starting to see a lot of the flaws, and namely, it's their defense right now. And part of that is Al Horford is a lot older and can't guard in space, and we're seeing them constantly and consistently attack him, and he was such an integral part to what they did last season, and he's looking a year older right now. It's starting to show.
Yeah, Ashley, I loved your feed item on this. The Celtics love playing with their food.
Yeah.
I might be paraphrasing a little bit, but I remember I previewed that series and I was just like, don't play with your food, Celtics. And that's how I felt. So what are your thoughts so far initially on this series?
Look, nobody thought James Harden was going to go ahead and turn back the hands of time, right? Now, the question mark with him, much like with Anthony Davis, Nat, like we were talking about with the Lakers series, Can he do it consistently? Because you're going to have to do it consistently. I don't know what percentage of Joel Embiid you're going to get. I'm going to lean towards he's not 100%. He's going to play through whatever issue he's dealing with, whatever pain he's dealing with, but you're not going to get 100% of him, at least not right now, or maybe not at all throughout this series. So the Celtics need to go ahead and capitalize off of that. I think that they need to figure out what the hell went wrong in game one. There was no reason why a Joel Embiid-less 76ers team should have beaten you. I don't care what kind of performance James Harden had. You had a lot more firepower on the floor to go ahead and pull out a win. But we've seen this with the Celtics. I agree, defensively, there are holes in their game, but offensively, they have done enough to go ahead and consistently overpower that. They're a deep team. We saw this with the Atlanta series. For some reason, they have a bad habit of playing down to their competition. And I'm not saying the 76ers are drastically below them, but we talk about depth and we talk about complete teams. The Celtics are a better one from that side of the argument. So for whatever reason, they cannot seem to go ahead and close these games out when they need the most. And they need to figure out why. Because if you only get a fraction of the version of James Harden that you saw in game one, and you get a fraction of a healthy Joel Embiid, and the Celtics continue to play the game the way they have been playing, they're in for a rude awakening. And every mistake you make against a 76ers team, this is not Atlanta, this is not the Spurs, this is not the Houston Rockets. They will go ahead and capitalize that, and you're going to be in a deep hole that I don't think you want to be in. So they need to figure that out, and they need to figure out those adjustments quickly.
Yeah, Siobhan, you know this team intimately because your Heat played them last year, and they always seem to play them tough. So I want to know your thoughts on this series, but if the Heat are to advance, which I know Ash wouldn't want, but we're going to get there. We're going to get there. I mean, who would you prefer to see, the Celtics again or the Sixers? I think you're on mute.
You're muted.
I'm sorry. I think I would prefer to see the Celtics much for the reason why even a hobbled Joel Embiid is a lot to handle. Like, Joel is the reason I wouldn't want to see the Sixers. One, I think the Celtics series last playoffs was extremely tough. The whole we lost by one shot, I don't quite lean all the way into there, but I do know that there were weaknesses in the Celtics defense last season that were there to be exploited, but for whatever reason, we didn't have the manpower to exploit it. Tyler was hurt that series, and Tyler, I've said this before, Tyler's game is one that was so well suited for the Celtics series last season because of his maneuverability, his ability to get kind of into those small pockets that the Celtics relied on creating in their like really well-controlled drop. So because of that, and I think what you've seen from Miami this season, or at least this playoff run, the quarter end of the season, actually into the playoffs, was our role players, the guys that helped bolster this team. They began to find themselves. We began to shoot better. Confidence began to rise. Jimmy continued to round into the form that he's looked. He's just been awesome. He's been dominant. And I think now, even with Tyler out, like, I wouldn't mind going at the Celtics again. We seem to have Philly's numbers sometimes, but I just don't want to gamble with something that I really, really value in a Joel, in a size, a skill, just the ability to dominate. We can't match that from a size perspective. We don't have James Harden is a really just raw offensive talent. It's arguable whether or not we have that without Tyler on the floor. So I think we match up well with the Celtics. I don't know who I think win that series. I think Philly wins that series, but I don't. If it goes 6-7, that wouldn't surprise me at all. I would like to see the Celtics if it happens. If it's the Sixers, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah, I have the Celtics in 7. What's your pick, Ash?
Okay.
I had Celtics in 6, but just like the Lakers Warriors series, I'm going to go ahead and extend that. I think it goes 7 as well, but I'm still sticking with Boston.
What about you, Imman?
I go back and forth. I really would like to see what adjustments the Celtics in particular make. Like, are you going to start Rob Williams? Is Al Horford going to come off the bench? What do you do there? And how do the Celtics continue to sort of...
I think you have
Sorry?
to start. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I know, but like,
I think you have to start
no, no,
stuff like that.
you have like I'm interested to see what sort of adjustments Joe Mazzulla makes, because right now it's very clear that yes, the Celtics can score with the best of them, but you're gonna have Joel Embiid there. It's not gonna be a layup line like it was in game one. And so that makes me a little scared. But of course, with Joel Embiid being kind of iffy, I might lean Celtics in seven. But that's just because I don't trust Joel Embiid's health. If he were healthy, the Sixers have been my pick in that matchup, just because I think people are overlooking some really big defensive holes for the Celtics, and that's just masked by some elite 3-point shooting that they've had all year. And we've seen that sort of fail teams at times.
Okay, well, we're going to keep it in the East, and we're going to take it to New York because I wanted to save the best for last. Because, listen, I'm not a Jimmy Butler believer, so I know that doesn't make Siobhan happy. And I have doubted the Knicks all season, but both of these teams have shocked me and surprised me. And, now that series is really interesting to me. But I must say, the Heat being able to almost win that game last night with no Jimmy on the floor, I don't know, Ash. What's up with your Knicks?
I'm not too worried about that. It definitely was somewhat concerning in the moment. I think Tibbs made the right adjustments down the stretch, though. It was Julius Randle's first game back after his ankle situation. Also, our bench didn't do what it normally does, and that's produce points. So I think that also was the biggest X on the mark. Obi Toppin didn't have that great of a game. Emmanuel quickly got hot a little bit too late in the game. That's normally not something that happens. Quentin Grimes was missing shots that he normally hits. So I'm not worried about that. The bench didn't go ahead and normally give us what they're used to giving us. But I will say this. That game was a must win. You have to win when Jimmy Butler's not on the court. Now both Jimmy Butler and Julius Randle are going to have ample time to deal with their ankle situation. Same thing with Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson got hot later in the game. He was looking a little iffy too with his sore ankle. I think down the stretch, like I said, that second half, more specifically, the Knicks made the right adjustments to go ahead and do the things that they needed to do to win that game. I think it's going to be interesting, though, when we bring it to Miami for game 3, game 4, and eventually as this series continues, health permitted, you're going to have both teams at full strength. Now, when I say full strength, obviously the Heat are without Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo, which makes them a little bit at a deficit when it comes to scoring. But as you can see, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, those guys can always step up. Max Strus. It's going to be interesting to see what game 3, game 4 looks like. I think game 3 is going to be the true indicator of who the leader in this series is. You had game 1, you didn't have Julius Randle. Game 2, you didn't have Jimmy Butler. Game 3, I'm assuming they both will be back. Whoever wins that game, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm leaning towards wins that series.
Okay. What was your initial pick coming into the series?
I had Knicks in 6, baby. Come on, don't ask me silly questions.
And that's still nothing has changed?
I'm still Knicks in 6. I'm sticking with it. I'm still sticking with it.
All right. Siobhan, what say you?
Are you asking my prediction? Okay. So I have Miami in 6. I think last night was probably the best loss I've ever seen. I've never felt better about a loss. Yes, Ashley, y'all needed to win one. That was a must win, but I think it needed to feel more like a win. I don't know that New York fans feel confident in what
it felt like a win. It felt like a win.
Well,
7th Avenue was crowded. It was lit. It felt like a win.
All right. Well, if that felt
Don't
like
take away
win,
from superstar Scott Foster. Don't dim his light.
Please,
we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do that.
No. What I'm saying is Miami. So without their leader, without the dude who put 37 and a half consistently on Milwaukee, Miami was still able to. I think they played a pretty composed game, and they still had places, pockets of improvement, missed rotations, missed assignments. That stretch of it was 3 of 5 possessions that we didn't cover out, and Jalen and Josh Hart, was just open in the corner. We had a lot of mental lapses, but we also did a lot of things well. You all shot really well from the outside. Game 2, I'm happy with the way that we protected the paint a bit better. I'd much rather live with cutting New York's paint touches and paint activity, the dynamicism of a Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart, their ability to get, north and south. I'd much rather show that I'm better able to handle that and see if your shooters are going to shoot as well as they did in game 2 in Miami. And I just, from what I've watched over the course of, like I said, really, really the last quarter of this season, Miami has really, really just been tightening the gears kind of on all levels. It was so cool being in the press conference and hearing the way that the Jimmys and the Bams and Coach Spo, they really, really have instilled an incredible amount of like confidence in Caleb and Max and Gabe and all of Duncan when he's in. Like all of these guys feel that they have to be impactful and it does something, especially for a team that's made up the way that they are. They're always one that needs all of their pieces to kind of do the things that they're supposed to do right at the right time. We were down, I think, 5 dunk. They made the substitution on the baseline out of bounds. Duncan come in, knocks a 3, stuff like that. That air ball, it does hit the rim. Gabe's right there. That's a layup. Like we've gone about our processes well for the most part all season, and the results are paying off. And I give homage to the way that they continue to just go about the business. They don't ever really panic much about themselves. And I think you saw Jimmy, like the shot of him at the bench, just kind of like nodding his head. Like he felt good about what he saw from his team last night, knowing that he wasn't there. I had Miami in 6. I'm not going to do a lot and say I've lowered it to 5. I'm not going to. I put a lot of value in Julius Randle. I think Jalen and Josh are really good. And I think RJ Grimes, I really like the pieces that New York has, but I really like the way that we feel right now. I'm going to stay Miami in 6, but I think it's a fun series.
Okay, well, Imman, I know that you've been paying close attention to this series because yes, Kyle Lowry is your guy. So he stepped up huge in this series.
Yes.
I can't, this series just surprises me. So what are the keys for the Knicks going into Miami and stealing one of those games and getting a split and getting back their home court advantage?
Okay, so one thing, I gotta ride for Heat beat if you're not going to Siobhan. Heat in 5. What are we doing?
Come on, yes, I'm trying to be measured a little bit.
No, but here's the thing. We saw Spo really play a ton of zone, right? And the Heat got absolutely destroyed on the glass there. And the Knicks were hitting their shots. That's what you got to do. That's like hit your outside shots if they're going to play that much zone and just absolutely destroy them on the glass. I think Bam is going to have to be bigger. I think even like in terms of Kyle, I have to come at him. He was really passive, especially in that sort of second half. And we saw like Jalen Brunson get going. You need to sort of have your main guys, as much as you want the Struces and the Vincents and the Caleb Barnes to go off. You need to have Bam and Kyle also take on a lot of that offensive load. Maybe Kyle can't do it because he's 37 years old. You got to give him like 2 days in between, 3-day break. But Bam's really got to be a lot more aggressive. 10 shots is just not enough if the Heat are going to continue to do this, especially with Jimmy being hobbled and out there. But I think the Knicks still have a path. We've seen it. This series has been very close, but I think the Heat, I'm with Siobhan, should feel very confident about that loss. I thought the process was good. I think you need, I didn't like how I'm trying to find a way to sort of phrase this without coming really at Bam Adebayo, but I would just love to see him a little bit more aggressive. And I think the Knicks can sort of look at this and say, hey, if we make our outside shots and if we absolutely destroy them on the glass, we have something here. And hopefully Scott Foster can ref another couple of games for them and Knicks in 6.
No, I got to give my co-host the last word.
We're not going to do that. Hold on a second. We're not going to do that. The Heat did not lose that game because of Scott Foster. Let's go ahead and give credit where credit is due. Yeah. Eric Spoelstra himself even said the same thing.
For sure.
Bad decision making down the stretch. And also, Nat, have you ever been to a Heat game?
Yes, I have.
Miami?
Yes.
Okay, well, it's home court advantage for 3 and 4 also, all right? This is the 6th borough. Come correct. Just know that, all right? It's going to be a whole lot of Knicks fans in the arena, and I will be one of them. Thank you very much.
I knew you were not going to let them tag team you like that.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, it is a home court advantage for 3 and 4 for us also. Call it MSG number 2.
Okay. Imman, Siobhan, thank you so much. Appreciate y'all. We need to come back after this series is over and regroup and see what happens.
Thank you, Nat. Good to talk to you.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.